Welcome to the Beyond Bound Coach and AD Professional Development Series, a weekly online professional development for athletic administrators and coaches. Join us as 6 former ADs now employed by Bound and with over 100 years of combined experience discuss topics important and beneficial to ADs and coaches. Join us on this journey of professional growth. We're here to help you take your coaching and athletic administration to the next level and beyond.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to episode 11, the February 2nd edition of Beyond Bound. This is our Groundhog Day edition of Beyond Bound Professional Development. So you're going to see this episode on loop all day long and part of tomorrow. So yes. Stay tuned. And as a bonus for this edition, the Puxatawny Phil did not see his shadow today, so we have an early spring coming. So hang in there, everybody. You're going to get your spring, you're going to get your track meets in, and nothing's going to get postponed because the groundhog has spoken.
I love it.
All right. So
that might be the kiss, the jinx of all jinxes for their spring events now, Joey.
So yes.
It can't be worse, Aaron. It can't be worse.
All right.
It's all my fault. I get it. I take it. Bring it on. So what we've tried to do here for you all is to provide some unique experiences from our perspective by coaches and ADs for coaches and ADs. We've spent some time talking about professional development, student leadership, having the difficult conversations was last week, I believe it was. And one of the things that I think we can do to enhance those difficult conversations, make them a little easier, is to build cohesion with our coaching staff and have those relationships develop to the next level. What we want to do today is to give you some practical tips and things that you can do to help enhance those professional developments and those relationships so that those conversations can be easier. As we all know, athletic department cohesion can improve communication within your staff and yourself. It can improve collaboration between the staff and provide better atmosphere for the students. Anytime your coaching staffs can get along and work together, you're going to provide a better atmosphere and a better experience for your student athletes. And ultimately, remember, that's who we're here for. We're here for the kids, not for ourselves. We're not here to win ball games, though that's what we want to do. Winning is not the purpose of our programs. We're here to grow students and grow them as people. So how do we get along better as a coaching staff? And in a second, I'm going to go around the room and we're going to give you some ideas that we've seen or perhaps implemented. Here are a couple of things that I've done. Book studies are a good way to help your coaches communicate. You get a common theme. I've used a lot of John Gordon books. They're easy reads. You win in the locker room first. The Hard Hat, even the Coffee Bean. All good, simple books that you can wrap your mind around. Your coaches don't have a lot of time. They're teachers, they're coaches, they're husbands, they're fathers. They have a life, and you don't want to take up too much of their time. But one of the things that we've done that I thought was the most fun to help build cohesion was our social gatherings. Every summer, I would book 2 dates, one in June, one in July, and I would invite the coaches all to lunch. Called it Lunch for Nothing. That's how much they paid, and that was the reason we were meeting. We're meeting for no reason at all. And it was voluntary. Anybody who wanted to come on that particular day could come. I only had 3 rules. 1, you couldn't sit with your own coaching staff. 2, you couldn't sit next to the same person that you sat next to at the last meeting. And 3, you couldn't talk shop. Everything else was fair game because we wanted to get to know people. What are you doing this summer? How are your kids doing? How's your spouse doing? Those kinds of things. And I think that they really enjoyed that. I had really good turnouts with those things, and it just brought us closer together. So there's one thing that we did. Now, can you afford to do that is one thing in your budget. Fortunately, I had some sponsors who would help pay for that. Sometimes the restaurant would even give you a nice little discount if you come in there and have a sit-down gathering with your coaching staff. Tell them why you're doing it. Tell them who it's for. And a lot of times they'll give you those things. And the last thing is to make learning fun. Every year we had to have our annual coaches meeting where you have to go through the things that you have to talk about, the CYA stuff. You know, you're talking about policies and procedures and perhaps your legal duties as a coach and your transportation rules and procedures and things like that. So you have to do those things. But what I did was I made our meeting offsite at Great Shots or Top Golf, if you will. It's called in a lot of places. I'd book a room there. They'd give me a discount on a taco bar or a sandwich bar, and I'd rent a half a dozen bays from them at a discounted rate. And after the meeting, we'd have lunch and we'd swing some golf clubs and just get to go together to learn about each other and to have fun and see each other in a social situation. And a lot of times when that happened, what happened was people stopped making excuses why they couldn't come. I don't have to do that. It's funny how attendance increases at those things when you put something fun on the back end of it. So those are some things that we did. And now I'm going to go around the room and get some thoughts and discussions. Brian, you're at the top of my screen.
I love that. And just hearing you there at the end, I wish I would have done a little bit more of the fun activity at the end, or I did a meal once or twice, but that stuff can get expensive too, and figuring out how to pay. So you got to think through all those different topics. But I think the key to what you said, Joey, for coaches is you're treating them a little different, but get them out of the building. And that's one thing I didn't do. And I think, you didn't even really mention it, but get them out of the building. And it just it has a different feel to it for your coaches. And so something maybe you didn't realize that you were even doing, but as I hear you, I think I want to do that with Joey's coaches. That sounds fun. Get out of the building, go do something fun like that. That's a great idea. I brought it up on my other screen. Every year, the last 6 or 7 years of my career as an AD, at my coaches meeting in August, I put 2 slides up, and I shared both those slides every year, no matter what. Some of my old hat coaches got tired of hearing the same thing over and over again. But what we talked about, because what I started realizing, as you guys are all probably very aware, is communication is the issue 90% of the time. And I'm talking in general. Communication with parents, communication with kids, communication with other coaches. Communication breakdown generally leads to a lot of problems. And so I brought a slide up that said communication issues, and I talked about how do we deal with communication issues with adults. And I said with parents, we immediately need to reach out to the parent. Do not send them a text. Do not ignore it. If you have an issue with a kid in your practice or at a game and you haven't communicated that to a parent, and I've got stories of that working against me where I thought, not that big a deal, and it festers and festers, and all of a sudden that parent's in the office with me. And so deal with it right away. So I tell my coaches, deal with parent and kid issues immediately and do it directly. Don't be afraid. Young coaches in particular, don't be afraid to manage and deal with it directly. But the one that was longer that I talked with them about is when you're communicating with other coaches and administrators, I put 3 points here. Coaches communicate with each other, not with athletes or athletes' parents. They communicate with a coach. So we don't handle problems by communicating through a kid or through another parent. Does that make sense? And so I told them, this is just how we're going to do it. I know people do it other ways. That's fine. We are going to always handle because we're on the same team, no matter what. And so if a kid comes and says, I can't come to softball because I have track practice, the coach does not argue with the kid. The coach goes directly to that coach. The coach does not go to the parent and create a festering little issue. We're a team. We need to work together like a team. It's okay to have conversations with other coaches, with teammates. We go directly to the source. Okay. It is okay to talk to other teammates, coaches on our staff. And what I pointed out was this is how we're going to be different than everyone else in society. Everyone else manipulates truths, creates problems, or they try to create advantages for themselves by doing it the other way. We're going to do it differently. We're going to put the kid first. And when you put a kid first, it's just like parents. Parents don't argue about discipline in front of the kids. They're on a united front. And then the last thing I say, I bring up another slide and I say, we support each other 100% as coaching staff. So we build a culture where the programs are all for each other. We promote each other's social media pages whenever we can. We attend each other's events whenever we can. We encourage other student athletes or band or chorus or whatever. And then we support each other by how we take care of our spaces. So we clean locker rooms. We keep our practice spaces well kept. We pick up after ourselves. So what do I tell my children when they leave a room? Hey, when you don't pick up for yourself, you're not thinking about the rest of your family. The same is true for our coaches. When you don't pick up the gym, you're not thinking about the rest of your team. And that's selfish, So I put those two slides up. That's one generic way. There's lots of ideas out there. I want to hear the rest of your thoughts because I already love what Joey said too.
Thanks, Brian. Aaron?
Appreciate the topic. I think it's something that it's hard to do. I love the ideas you had there, Joey, in terms of getting them off campus and the lunch and the things like that. The thing I've always struggled on, and I've talked with a lot of you guys at different times over the years about this, our coaches already put in so much time and so much energy. They're year-round coaches for pennies on the dollar, kinds of thing. And so I always had a hard time asking for more time from them to have meetings and things like that. But it's also so important. So you have to find the right balance as an AD because you need to have gatherings either completely personal and fun ones like you're talking about, Joey, or you have to have those professional discussions and you got to have those coaches meetings where you're hashing things out and stuff. So find the right balance on that. But mine are more on the professional side I was going to talk about. And last week I talked about the standards of, was it last week? Standards? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Standards of excellence. There were two things that we did as a coaching staff. One was we had our vision mission day. And we got together on a Saturday morning. I bought them breakfast, I bought them lunch and all that stuff. And we went and we did get off site and we spent 4 hours hashing through our vision and mission and just the philosophy conversations and the what kind of problems we're trying to solve through athletics problems and things like that. They learn so much about one another. I've got a bowling coach talking to my cheerleading coach, and those two are starting to find out that they've got a lot of things in common and philosophies in common of how they want to impact and influence kids through the platform of their sports. And they would have never had that conversation if they weren't in that room sitting down and talking. So it's important to get them engaged in those conversations because they will find kindred spirits amongst their other coaches. They might both be trying to do the same exact thing or take on the same type of problem and be able to bounce ideas off of one another in those types of meetings. The other ones, when I talked about the standards of excellence last week, that was an ongoing thing all year long. So we were meeting monthly, 6:30 a.m. for 45 minutes. And that took us probably 6 of our 9 meetings in the school year. We spent a good chunk of our time talking about our standards of excellence and developing those that I shared with you last week. And I had the same type of rule, Joey, where we would throw out the topic of what we're going to talk about. What does being relentless look like in your program? What does, if not me, then who look like in your program? How do you teach that and things like that with your kids? And so we if you've been around, I've had the acronym that be uncommon and use the Cougars on that. So again, we're having those conversations about what does it mean? How do you teach courageousness? How do you teach being optimistic? How do you teach being generous? We would always break out, have small group conversations. They could never be with the same coach 2 meetings in a row. But when they started having conversations about how do you teach generosity through your program? How do you teach being relentless? How do you teach being emotionally stable? You're resilient through your program. And the conversations they had and the things they learned about one another in just small group discussions. So I'd say one of the things is if you're going to get them together, also then get out of the way. Give them something meaningful to talk about and get out of the way. You can share a lot of the other stuff via email. If you're going to bring them together, give them time to talk and learn from one another. Would be the advice I'd have on that when you have those meetings. So with that, I'll step back and listen to the others.
All right. Thanks, Aaron. Mark, your turn.
So, first of all, Joey, can I come and coach for you on your staff? Because I'd never coached on a staff that got to eat and do top golf on the same day, or even probably either at any time. So that'd be awesome. Anyway, yeah, having fun activities is awesome. Great idea. Great follow through on your part. I want to talk from a little different angle, maybe of preventing conflict, preventing issues. One area that seems to cause issues is when we share athletes, and it can fracture your coaching staff. I'm looking at varsity coaches when I speak about this, but you got an athlete and you got overlapping seasons, and they're still out for track, but softball has started as well. And so those are some times where your coaching staff can be fractured and driven apart. And then guess who's in the middle of that? The poor athlete who didn't do anything wrong. They just love being all sports. So a concept that's out there is, when you have your preseason or preschool year meeting with your coaches on a big whiteboard, could be done on a spreadsheet. I like the whiteboard, so it's in front of everybody. Across the top, you have a column for each month of the year starting in August, and then down the side, you have each sport activity. And then you ask each coach to fill in the squares that go across in their sport, what their timeline is for the school year. So if I'm the volleyball coach, obviously my season's going to start. I start in August with my practices. I get games, and my season ends November, whatever, if we get to the state tournament. And then what about the rest of the months? Well, AAU volleyball starts in January. So put that on the calendar, put that out there. And the basketball coach puts his or her stuff out there, and the track coach and so forth. And what are your off-season expectations, like AAU volleyball, like open gyms for basketball, or indoor hitting practices for baseball and softball? Put those timelines out there, and everybody can visually see where those overlaps are. And then have those discussions about what are we going to do during those times. And those two coaches, say again, track and softball, they sit down seeing that overlap, and they discuss how that's going to happen, how it's going to take place. So it's taken care of in August and not in April and May when the seasons are going on. And then the parents are riled up because, well, they're making my kid do this and that, just how those things can happen. So I think it's being proactive in planning out your year and the time. And I think the coaches, they respect each other. And when they sit and plan ahead of time, they're genuinely respectful, genuinely helpful, genuinely loving the kid who is in all those activities. But if you wait until the time it happens, it's too late. And that genuine respect it doesn't always, but it can go out the door, and you don't want that. So just a thought of how to handle that.
Yeah, that's great. An ounce of prevention, right?
Yep.
Worth a pound of cure. Yeah, good stuff, Mark. Todd, you going to bring it home?
I'll bring it home. And that's kind of where mine kind of lands is these are more like social things that I've done that I did in the past. One of the things I tried to do was in the summer when I would take a job, and I realized I've been in more places than all of you collectively here. So when I would go to a new school, one of the things we did, one of the schools, we had an ice cream social. It was just in June or July, and we would have that at our house, and we invited the entire family. So coaches, bring your families, bring your wives, because, Deb and I wanted to meet who we were working with too. So just an idea, when you take a job, do something in the summer and have them bring their families. honestly, one of the things that we tried to look at when we bought a house, if we could, was how does this play out for our social activities with coaches? Does this house allow us to do that? So that was important to us. One of the other things I did, which I really enjoyed, was a morning breakfast once a month at our house, and we would prepare the food. And so, they could come anytime between 6:30 and 7:30 a.m. And if they had a practice, they might not get there, but those were fun because they were just sitting around our house and sitting around our kitchen table or our dining room table. And that was just for coaches and directors. I was always big on making sure I invited the directors and every sponsor as well, not just coaches. But again, you're trying to create that unity from, like we said, choir to football or whatever it might look like. So those people need to know each other. So just sit around our kitchen table and enjoy breakfast and stay for 15, 20 minutes if you want, and stay for an hour if you want and have an extra cup of coffee. Now, it was school days, so there were not mimosas or Bloody Marys served at these, just as people might think, but they were not. It was all up and up. The other thing I did, which, again, just a fun one, I would, one fall, I had a Monday night football watch party. Come to my house and we'll sit and we'll watch Monday Night Football. Bring your own beverage or don't bring a beverage and I'll supply you a beverage. And if it was nice, I'd set it up in my garage and we'd sit around the garage. And so I was always trying to get people together outside of school. And that usually came at my house. And a lot of times we were just providing the food. So kind of like we had before, just ways to get people together outside of the school. Developing relationships so they can work a little bit better together. Great topic, Joey.
Thanks, guys. Great ideas. Mark, you talked about those kids who overlap with another sport or another activity. One thing's in South Dakota that I think our Activities Association has done really well is we have no sports that overlap. We don't start one until the state tournament from the previous one is done. Basketball doesn't start until football's state championship is done. So those don't overlap. So and then Todd, to your point, you've got to include the activities and not just the athletic coaches, because there's where we overlap. Our marching band and football or volleyball or whatever sport is in the fall. Those things are big. At my previous school at Lincoln, marching band was 150, 175 kids. It's a big band. And so you're always sharing kids. So if you don't get those marching band directors talking to your coaches and building those relationships, yeah, you're right. It gets a lot harder because then the kid is stuck in the middle. I think it was Aaron who said that. Who's stuck in the middle? Or maybe it was Todd or Mark. But either way, that's what happens. So great conversation, you guys. I really appreciate it. This is always the best part of the week, is getting to talk to you guys and bouncing things around and ending the week, heading off into the weekend. And want to thank everyone for tuning in. We'll be back again next week for more topics by ADs and coaches for ADs and coaches. Have a great weekend, everyone.